Most of you are probably familiar with ON1 Photo RAW by this point, so I'm going to get a couple of the basic things out of the way. ON1 Photo RAW combines the simplicity of a photo browser with the power of a RAW processor and an effects engine, all in a layered, non-destructive workflow. So all of that combined into one. Think of it like the best parts of Lightroom and Photoshop combined into one application. And you don't have to import your photos. This is a big point. I'm going to touch on this throughout the Browse module here, but I'm going to cruise through this module pretty quickly. So the Browse module here, this is how we're going to find our photos. You can see I have a thumbnail view of the folder that I'm in and all of the different photos. Here on the left side, you can see my different folders that I've navigated to. Cataloged folders, this is kind of an advanced feature that I'm not really going to touch on today, but yeah, I'll send out a video. I would highly recommend doing this to your frequently visited photo folders. Just drop the folder you want to catalog into there. It's a very handy, fast way to do some metadata changes and find the photos that you're looking for. So you can see here also on the left side in Browse, I have my local drives on my machine. So I have my Mac HD. I can navigate, to whatever folder I have with different images on it. In here, I have my cloud storages. You can see I have my connected drives as well. So if I do have an external hard drive connected, I can jump into that very fast to edit and cull my photos. I also have my cloud storages, my Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive. I personally use Dropbox for all of my stuff, and then I just catalog my photography folder up here from my Dropbox. And it's just a very handy way for me to get back to the photos quickly versus clogging up my actual hard drive itself. But if you use external hard drives, it's going to act in the same way. You can see as I pull this down, I have my breadcrumbs here that I can keep navigating to different areas to. So that being said, let me jump back up here. So you can see here I'm in my demo photos folder. Sorry, that's kind of a tongue twister. And I can click on my breadcrumbs at the top to easily get back to that and jump over here. I'm just hitting the arrow to jump back into this folder, the Sizzle one. But now that I'm in the Sizzle folder here, I'll just show you guys the breadcrumbs that you can see. Here's all my folders in the demo photos, catalog folders, and then I'm going to click on Sizzle here, or I could click on Sizzle here to open that up. I have my thumbnail size that I can change right down here. This is a very handy feature if you're looking at a lot of images, that are the same model that you kind of want to get a quick compare view. This is a very handy way. There's also a different compare view that I'll show in a second here. But the grid view is a very handy way for you to get a top-level look at the photos in your folder, see where you are in that folder when you were out shooting. So, if you had, let me actually jump over to a portrait sequence here so you can kind of see a little bit more of a workflow for that. Let's do Bella. So as I'm looking through this photo folder here, if I wanted to, in grid view, just quickly add, you can see here I have a green tag added to these photos because they're all kind of in the same location right here. So I can do that just by clicking on the photo and simply clicking, the star ratings, clicking up here and choosing my color tag that I want to add to that. But the way I prefer to work is actually with my keyboard here. So I'm going to hit 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 on my keyboard, and you can see it changes that star rating. Similarly, as I hit a 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, it's going to change that color rating there for me as well. If I hit a P, it's going to add a heart for me, kind of like a pick and choose, but I'm not going to do that. So a very easy way for me in grid view to just kind of look at these and say, oh, I like this one, I might edit it, I'll give it 4 stars. This one, I'll give that 4 stars. I like this one a lot better, I'll give it 5 stars. And I'm just going to add 5 and move forward, add 5 and move forward. Another way I could do this is if I wanted to group these and quickly add that color tag to them, I could choose one, and then I'm just going to shift and click down here on all of these, and I'm going to change this actually using my keyboard. Let's try, I'm going to hit 7 right now and change them to yellow. So you can see that easily applied those all quickly to that set of photos there in that location. Now, and there's obviously some more that we could have grabbed, but I'm not going to do that for demo purposes here. But why do I want to do this in grid view? Well, it just allows me to kind of narrow this down a lot easier when I do want to edit. And coming back over to the left side, I have my filters panel here. And if I click this and just choose the yellow tag, well, now I just have my yellow files, my yellow tagged files that I added. And so now choosing the F key on my keyboard, I can go into film strip view. And this is just a, oops, sorry about that. I actually hit the wrong button there. It's just an easy way for me to look at my photos in a bigger view mode. Oops, sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble there with that. Let's actually jump into a different photo folder here because I'm going to come back to Bella in a second. Let's go back to Sizzle and I'll show you how to do this better through here using the film strip view. So in film strip, like I said, you can see all of your, oh, what's going on here? Let me actually close this down and start this back up. Sorry about that, guys. The Zoom software can sometimes cause some havoc with ON1 Photo RAW, so I'm just going to close that real fast and let it reset itself. And hopefully you guys can still see my screen there. If not, throw a question into the Q&A module and I'll adjust it, but it looks like everyone can see it still. So sorry about that. Now that I'm in my demo photos, I'm going to go to Sizzle and I'm going to go back to my film strip view down here. And I'm actually going to turn on a feature now that I'm in film strip view called the Auto Advance feature. And up here under Photo, I can go and click Auto Advance. And so rather than having to choose a rating on my keyboard and then hit the arrow every time I choose a rating, now I can simply just click a number on my keyboard and it's going to add that rating to every photo and just jump me to the next photo. So you can see I'm just clicking 3 on my keyboard right now and it's adding the 3 stars to these images and jumping me to the next image. So Auto Advance, this is a great little handy tool that I use a lot in film strip view, and I just go through and, you know, maybe instead of adding a 3-star to this, I'm going to say 5 stars. I really like that image. You know, maybe 1 star. I'm not a huge fan of that. You know, and just kind of get a little portfolio together of just my 5-star and my 1-star images of this folder itself, so that I can then go back and edit all my 5 stars or go back and publish all my 5 stars. Hitting my G key on my keyboard in film strip view will put me right back into my grid view. So I personally like to go between film strip and do that ratings and then go back to my grid view, you know, look at where I'm at and things, and maybe I'll actually sort this down here at the bottom. I can sort by the different ratings. I can sort by different color label, things like that. So just another handy way to organize your photos, organize your folders themselves, things like that. So I think we are good to go. Let me actually show you guys this. Sounds like someone had said the dock was blocking them, so let me flip that around. Sorry about that. So I'm going to sort these by rating now. And let me flip this over, actually. So you can see all my 5-star photos are now at the top of this folder, and all my unstarred or 1-starred are going to be here now at the bottom. I could keep sorting this folder itself by different, you know, the file name, the labels that I've added, or even the date captured to that. So yeah, just another handy way to organize there. Another thing that's really great, especially with cataloged folders, is let's say I'm working in this folder here, and all of a sudden I decide I want to jump to edit some of my photos from the Oregon coast or from the mountains here or of a specific model. Well, in the filters menu, I can go and I can search my cataloged folders, and I can search for, I'll just type in Oregon coast, and all of my Oregon coast photos will pull up. And these are either in an Oregon coast folder, or I've added metadata to them, a keyword to them that says Oregon coast. It's you can see Oregon right there. I think these are actually in the Oregon coast folder themselves, but I can actually go even deeper on this. I can come down to advanced and search this actually by the date captured, or the, time of day captured rather. And let me sort that by morning so we can find just our morning shots there at the Oregon coast. So just an easy way for you to search your catalog folders, find what you're looking for. That's in the filters area. It's very handy if you have clients coming in and you want to jump quickly to their folder specifically. So that's the filters area. That's the basics of browse. There's also a tethered shooting area. If you're a studio shooter or setting up like a photo booth, tethered shooting is where you want to go for that. The last thing I do want to show before jumping out of the browse module, there's actually two things I want to show. The first one being, let's jump back to that Bella folder here. That's kind of my favorite one to work on and show this example. So, you know, rather than doing the keyword or the tagging, the color tagging and the stars or the hearts, what I actually prefer to do sometimes is just make a folder inside of a folder. And I can do that right from within the browse module here. And what I do is going to be reflected on my machine as well. So in this folder here, I'm just going to choose these with her in the ukulele, shift click, and I'm going to then right click and I'm going to choose add a subfolder. And I'm going to say just Bella ukulele and let's say Bella uke with a flower dress or something like that. So I remember exactly where this was, what she was wearing. Move that to the folder, just click add, and that should be now here at the bottom. Yep, right there. You can see I've actually done this a few other times as well. So yeah, I like to actually organize it by folder inside of a folder. I'm sure a lot of you are similar. And you know, then from there, I'll go in and start doing my rating. And how I do that when I have these photos that are in a similar location is I'll actually use the compare mode to find out which one I like. So in this example, I'm going to choose this one, this one. I'm going to command click rather than shift click so I can jump over these. And I'm going to choose these here as well. Command click or control click if you're Windows. And I'm going to go down here to the compare view. And compare view is just going to put all of those photos in my view screen so that I can look at them and choose which face I like the best of this model. Which smile is the best of hers. There's a lock and pan for zoom that you can turn on and off, and to kind of show you that, zooming in, if I want to actually get down and dirty and look at her eyes, her mouth, everything kind of more intricately and choose which one's the best of these to showcase, I'll probably just do that with my star ratings or my pick heart here as well. And you can knock these out from this view with your slash key. So I'm just going to hit slash on my keyboard, and I'm going to get rid of the ones where there's kind of this flyaway interface. I don't want to spend too much time retouching just for these basic showcase photos here. So I'll kind of choose, maybe land on this one on the right is kind of my favorite one. So I'll give that 5 stars and a P and add a little heart to it. And then maybe let's just add a color tag so that I can differentiate that from those other ones that I've already demoed. So hitting my G key again will put me back in the grid view of this folder. Now I could probably do the same thing for these landscape oriented photos and choose, one portrait style, one landscape style, one to show off to her. Just an easy way to cull it down to whittle the best photos at the start so that you can go in and then edit your best ones. There's some other things that I can show you with Browse that I'll get into in a little bit in the webinar. One of those being presets that can be applied right from Browse. These are great for color correction, or if you have a certain style you're going to go to every time. These presets, you can add them right in Browse. I'm going to do that a little bit later here when we create our own preset. So that's the basics of the Browse module. Now, at the beginning of this webinar, I said that nothing has been imported, and that is true. Nothing has been imported into Photo RAW. I am just browsing my machine, looking at the connected drives, the photos in my folders, or my cloud storage options that I was showing. Scoot up here a little bit. My cloud storage options up here. Now, we do have an import feature, though, for, oops, sorry, the pop-up opened on my second screen. Let me bring that into here. So hopefully you guys can see that. Let me double check my sharing here and make sure that I'm sharing the correct window. Yep, okay, we're good. All right, so the import dialog here, this is actually going to take things off of my camera and move them to a location on my machine, either a folder of my choosing, or maybe it's an external hard drive you have connected as well with folders inside of it. So let me jump here. I think I have, yeah, so if I can even choose something from my external hard drive to actually quote unquote import into the app. Or into, sorry, my machine, or into a folder of my choosing. So using this example, I'm actually pulling this off of my external hard drive because I don't have a card connected, but the same idea would hold true if you had your camera or your card connected here. You would just choose that under source. So in here now, this import dialog, I can see all these different photos in that folder. I can choose a new location to copy them to. I can choose a new name to give them. So maybe I want to rename these after my client here, and maybe change the serial number starting at 1. Maybe I want to even add a metadata keyword that's just real estate, or maybe it's the date that I shot this, or maybe it's my client's last name. Something that's easily accessible. So now when I have all these photos selected and I want to when I want to import them, all of this metadata is going to be applied as it's copied over to another folder, or as it's copied off of my camera to a folder on my machine. So you can add presets when you do that. So if you're like shooting with a ring light and you have a color cast, like a magenta color cast on a model, you could apply a preset that was like a green color correction upon import. Add your metadata and stuff, and basically every photo would come in already, color corrected from that magenta cast, and you could, go crazy right on import and not have to worry about that at all in post. I'm actually not going to hit the import option here, but again, nothing is being imported into the app. It's more of a copy over to a folder or a download from my camera card to a folder of my choosing. So it's kind of a little sticky sometimes, but that is the import module. We'll get into the export module part, or the export drawer, I should say, probably after I jump into some of the editing techniques here, because Browse has a lot going on in it. Hopefully you guys picked up a few tips and tricks there. I know you probably all know how this works, but to kind of set it all up, I guess, that's the Browse module. I'm going to cruise over and look at the poll real fast for about half a minute. All right, great. Looks like we have some first-time webinar attendees here. Welcome. This is being recorded. If you didn't catch me at the beginning, it will be posted later today to our YouTube channel, blog, and probably our Facebook tomorrow morning. So if you need to duck out, feel free to do so. There's also the Q&A module. Feel free to use that throughout the entire webinar. I can show something over again or go in a different direction, answer something you need help with, whatever it may be. Let's see. Looks like a lot of you have owned it for quite a while, so I'll jump into some editing then. Okay. A lot of you know the basics there. That's good. Layers, Layers and effects. All right, cool. Well, I'll cruise through Develop really fast because there are a couple people that are interested in learning more about Develop to start with. So let me find an image here to get started with. So looks like I've already edited these photos here, and everything is non-destructive in our app. So no matter what I do here, I can always reset everything back to its original state. So I'm going to choose these 3 photos, and I know they're edited because of this plus minus right here. That shows me that I've added some kind of a edit or a color correction to the photo. So I'm going to choose reset all down here at the bottom, and you can see the thumbnails will reset to how they were when they were shot. So obviously the first thing that jumps out is it's very underexposed, and that was actually on purpose, I think, to actually capture some of the cloud dramatic sky going on here, but this is okay. This is an easy fix for us in ON1 Photo RAW, as a lot of you know. So I'm going to cruise through some of the basic color corrections for those of you who don't know. The Develop module over here on the right side, I just had my image selected in Browse, and I clicked on Develop, and now here I am in the Develop module. hitting the tab key on my keyboard will give me a full screen view, and bringing that tab key back will give me my presets if I wanted to choose a preset or something of that nature here. One thing, just kind of a handy little trick, I guess, is as you notice, if I scroll over these brushes up here, there's in parentheses a letter. That's the hotkey keyboard shortcut on my keyboard. So, you know, if you're going through the app and you wonder what something does or what the keyboard shortcut is, just hover your mouse over it and it'll help you out with that. So in the develop module, the right side, this is where I'm going to do all my raw processing, my color corrections. You can see here as I adjust this slider, it is going to adjust my photo exactly as it's moving on the slider there. I'm actually going to tone this back even more and make the clouds a little more dramatic. And I'm going to get rid of this levels up here because it's kind of distracting to me. I kind of like to get a top level view of my photo as well as this bigger view. So I'm going to tone back the exposure a little bit there, make that sky really, really stand out. And then I'm going to bring back my midtones and my shadows with these sliders down here. And these are very, very powerful sliders. A lot of you know how these work. You know, sometimes when I'm shooting skies, especially sunset or on the coast, I actually shoot underexposed on purpose to get that sky as dramatic as I can because I know I can fix it back here in RAW. One other handy trick as well, the J key on my keyboard. You can see there those highlights are kind of, I'll expose this a little bit higher so you can see. Those highlights, when I hit my J key, show what's blown out. And similarly, the black point can be shown just holding my J key still and just adjusting my black point. It just basically shows me my clipping, you know, what's true black, what's true white, that can't actually be detected by, you know, the pixel information is not there. I'm actually bring back these highlights a little bit and turn off my J key. It's probably pretty safe right there, I think, to move forward. I might turn up the structure just a touch, and then I might actually bring back the saturation just a touch there as well. So down here, this is where you do your tint corrections and your white balance as well. You know, if you're shooting RAW, you can adjust that white balance just like you can in your camera right here in RAW. I prefer to use this eyedropper myself and find like a neutral gray or a white somewhere like right here. And I might just cool this down a little bit that way and maybe just a little bit more that way. Give me something a little like that. Scrolling down here, there's also a details pane. This sharpening, noise reduction. We don't need to do too much here on that, or I'm not going to spend too much time on that. It's kind of advanced. Lens corrections here. This is automatically applied. I'm going to turn this off and on, and it's going to be really kind of subtle, but you can see how when it's on, it corrects for that peripheral distortion, that fall off, any chromatic aberrations or fringing you might see. I usually just leave this on and let it do its thing, and don't even really think twice about it. So now that we've got this photo kind of fixed or in a spot that's better for the tone and color, now I want to crop before I worry about these dust spots. I do know about the dust spots up there. We'll get to that. But I want to crop first and level. And so, whoops, let me get rid of that dock pop-up. Sorry about that. This Zoom software kind of bothers me with that. So this crop tool here, I'm just going to keep it as a free-form crop and then get rid of some of that foreground and maybe keep in that puddle on the side. Just kind of making it a little more appealing to the eye. I can actually level there too. I don't think I need to level too much on this photo, and I'm going to just click and drag. I'm not on my tablet, so I apologize if I don't get this exactly right. Oh, it looks like it's already pretty much level anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that. But if you do want to level your photos, just find a straight line on the horizon. It's very, very easy to level your photos in here, the crop tool. So moving down, I have my local adjustment brushes that are basically going to do all of these overall settings in a more localized fashion. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Let's first worry about those dust spots. So the first thing I'm going to use is my retouch brush. Before I get into my eraser or my clone stamp tool, My retouch brush is going to act like a smudge brush or a blur tool if you are coming from Photoshop. So I'm just going to drag that over that dust spot there, and it's just going to blur that in with the cloud. Same with up here on the top. I'm just going to drag that, and it looks like there's one up here I could click to. So very easy to get rid of dust spots or any kind of like hot pixels you might find if you're shooting astrophotography or doing long exposure. Perfect eraser tool is what you want to use for getting rid of power lines, birds in the sky maybe, or people on the beach. I've used that a few times, or used this tool a few times for doing that. I'm going to use it for this puddle right here because the warming tones are kind of bothering me on this puddle, and I'm just going to brush just like I was doing with my retouch brush. I'm just going to use my eraser brush now and paint right over that, and using content-aware technology, it's going to fill that in, and you never even knew that was there. If I wanted to step back, I could do so just by hitting Command or Control Z, and it's going to bring my puddle back there, and maybe I want to refine this brush a little bit more. So I didn't like exactly how that look came in, so I'll just reduce my brush size a little bit and be a little more precise with it. But I'm using a mouse here. I'm sure a lot of you have tablets or something a little better than this magic mouse I'm using, but that's the gist of the eraser tool. It's a content-aware brush. The clone stamp tool, if you're coming from Photoshop, you know exactly what this does. If you're not coming from Photoshop, this lets you set a target point to copy or clone, if you will. And the best way I can do this is to actually just make my brush really big and show you. Using my Option key, let's choose this sunrise here, or the sunset actually right here, so you can see. As I set my target point holding my Option key, I can now brush in that exact area down here on my photo if I wanted to. Obviously I don't want to, that looks terrible, but it gives you an idea of how this tool actually works. And I just hit Command Z to get rid of that again, because I don't want to ruin this photo too much. So that's the basics of the develop module, but now we have localized adjustments. We have a localized adjustment brush and a local adjustment gradient tool. So now that I've got my foreground where I want, I've kind of lost a little bit of my dramatic sky. And using this local adjustment gradient tool, you can see over here on the right, it bumped me over to the local adjustments pane. So like I said, this is a localized adjustment that you basically were doing over here to the entire photo, but more selective and localized. So using my gradient tool, I'm actually going to choose darken and make this really dark at first so you can see what's happening, and then I'll go fix that exposure later. And I'm just going to click right here with my gradient tool. You can see everything on the top is what is showing my white mask, black concealed, white reveals. Whatever I'm going to do in this local adjustment panel here is going to be reflected on this top part. I can obviously, move this way if I want to, or I'm obviously not going to do that. I'm going to keep it close to the horizon line here. And the way this works is, think of this middle line like 50%. This is your feather. So I can reduce the amount of feather both ways. This is 100%. This is kind of to 50%, and then 50 to 0. And then everything below this line is not feathered at all. So I'm going to make this kind of tight here. And maybe not that tight. That's a little too tight. I'm just going to have a light little bit on the water here. And I'll switch over to my mask view so that you can see that. Here, right here. You can see these areas are where the feathering is occurring, and that's where it's not feathered at all. So let me actually make this look a little better, not so underexposed. Something like that, maybe. I can even choose a brush now, my local adjustment brush, if I want to brush this exact adjustment in on the water, or maybe brush it out on this island here. So, I mean, it kind of looks a little weird, I guess. So let's just choose our brush. And I'm going to make sure at the top, rather than set to paint in, I can set myself to paint out. And choosing Shift X on my keyboard, I can toggle that on or off. So I'm going to set it to paint out right now. and I'm just going to brush off this filter off this island over here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to move forward. You get the idea. Let me Shift X and brush it back in on this cloud. And so that way the kind of island stays, a little more bright. And the clouds are still kind of dramatic. If I wanted to actually, or even add maybe some warming tones to that, I could. I don't want to. I'm going to go back to 0 just by double clicking. So let's say you do something like this. You can just double click temperature and we'll put you right back to there. And that holds true for all of these. So that's the basics of these adjustment brushes. I can keep adding layers if I want to. Maybe I do want to actually brush in some vibrance, let's say. This is just a preset tool. It's just boosting the vibrance. Let's actually just boost the vibrance and saturation so you can see what's happening here. And I'll just brush this in kind of on this sun, make it look kind of super fake at first. And then I can tone back this opacity to maybe something like that. And so let's say I want to apply these settings to all those other photos in my Browse module that I was looking at. I can just jump back to Browse. You can see this is my edited photo here. I can choose this photo right here, and I can just come right down to the sync option, or I can go to copy settings by right-clicking and going to copy settings, sorry, right there. And then I can paste the settings. I prefer just to use sync myself. So the super selected one in orange, these settings are now going to sync with this photo here. Probably some corrections that you could do there to make that pop a little more, or we could have done that sync before we added these corrections, the local adjustments, so that it fixed the photo before we kind of got in a little more creative with the top there. So that's the develop module. That's where you're going to fix your photo. That's where you're going to do any color corrections, underexposed photo fixing. Before I jump into effects or layers, I am going to quickly touch on the HDR and Pano module. I'm sure a lot of you are landscape shooters out there. So we have an HDR module. I don't know if any one of you are doing HDR or not, but if you do want to, just navigate to your bracketed photos. Simply select those photos, and you can see that, let me actually jump out to, I think this is a cool HDR one. So you can see when I have one photo selected, I can't access Pano or HDR. They're grayed out. I can't even get there. But when I click all of the photos in my bracket there that I want to merge, all I need to do is click HDR, and it's going to be super fast in merging these images together. And now it's going to give me my develop module to look at. I might actually, it looks like there's a little fringing there on that one, so I can turn off some of the different layers on this and see which one is causing the problem. This is actually a great segue into our new RAW 19 that's coming soon, which will allow me to align layers inside of the layers part. Let me jump to a different HDR one because that one wasn't shot very well. There's a little bit of blur. But yeah, there's a new align layers feature coming in the new RAW 19. That is going to alleviate that problem for us automatically, so we don't have to even worry about that. This example has some motion blur in the waves, but we have a still object, so it's a little bit easier versus the wind and the other one. So looking at this, you can see here I just have my develop module here. This is where I can correct my tone and color for this HDR merged bracket series that I just merged together. This HDR look is actually one of the filters inside of the effects module, and it's just brought into here so that you can, without even having to go into develop or effects after your merge, you can just stay here in HDR and do all of your, color corrections that you want to do, bring the shadows back. Let's actually tone those down a little bit. And get yourself however you want your HDR image to look. You can do that all right here in the HDR module. That didn't take me very much time at all. And as I mentioned, that new align layers feature is going to be very, very, very nice for all of you doing focus stacking and HDR, things like that. So to move on to the panorama module, same idea. If I only have one photo selected, I can't access the Pano or HDR module. If I have all three of mine selected, all I need to do is click Pano, and it's going to stitch my panos together for me, or stitch my photos together in a Pano for me, I should say. This works great with astrophotography, any kind of matrix type things that you're doing. It doesn't need to be a straight line. Sorry about that. My panel module opened on the other screen, so let me pop that back open for you. There's my 3 photos just stitched together. There's not any options really because it's not HDR. You know, it's basically just stitching the photos together. But like I said, matrix photos doesn't have to be a straight line. You can have, you know, 4 up, 4 sideways, and, you know, 20 or whatever in the middle there. And just, yeah, very, very handy tool, easy to use. There's a lot of information on that from Hudson Henry, our Plus coach. So go to our blog and you can look under some of his published articles to check out. He's kind of the resident pano expert here. So jumping on, let's jump into effects. I'm not going to spend any time on resize today. It doesn't look like anyone's really interested in that, and it's very straightforward what resize does. So the effects module, let me actually pull up a portrait image because I prefer to work on portraits myself, and I'll show you how to get this look right here, and let me reset that. So the effects module, this is a professional grade effects engine. It's going to give you all of the filters that you want to use here. Whoops, sorry about that. Just get my mouse back over here. So in the effects module here, you can see I have all my same tools that I had in develop, but I actually have more masking refinement options here. So I have my brushes, my clone stamp, my eraser, my retouch brush, and then more masking options to get closer if I'm doing, you know, masking around her hair, things like that, or if you're masking a mountain edge and need to get really precise, that's what these tools are for. Not going to spend any time on those today, though. So inside of effects, I have my filters pane. All these filters I can also access over here. Get to overall settings actually. I can access just by clicking add filter, overall settings, add filter. You can see that everything on the right is also on the left. Now the difference is on the left is it's going to kind of get you moving in the right direction, I guess you could say, with this specific filter. You know, so if we go click on, let's try cross process so you can see, you know, if I want to get something that's styled like this, I would choose this filter, and it's going to start me off with a cross process that's, you know, got that aqua teal kind of look to it. So the way I actually prefer to work myself is I've been using Photo RAW for so long. I just work over here on the right side, add filters, and I know kind of ahead of time that I might need to do some tone enhancements. I might need to do some color corrections just to kind of get her skin back in place. And then I can do some more, you know, more effectsy, more stylized types of things with dynamic contrast and with like a split toner. So using these filters is a great way to start. However, using presets, in my opinion, is a better way to start. Presets, there's a lot that are built into the app. There's a lot that we give away for free. And at the end of the day, you are going to make a lot yourself. So you can see there's some Donna's Frogs and then some my favorites as well, some from Shutterfest and Starting Point. So a lot of these are free on our website. A lot of these I've created, or Dylan, one of our other educators, has created here. What I'm actually going to do for this one is go with a faded and matte style. And you can see here I kind of have some different looks, but I don't really know what it looks like. So using this quick view browse feature up here, I can get a bigger look at what this preset is going to look like on my image. And you can adjust the size of your thumbnail down here if you want to. You don't need to, but I'm going to choose this matte 3 one here. Now remember, this is a preset. So a preset is a stack of filters that you have saved or that someone has saved that gives you a certain look. You are not bound by the preset by any means. I can go in and delete this vignette off of here if I want to just delete that vignette off of there. You can see that it kind of popped away. You know, if I want to actually look at all of these, you can see as I click on one, the other ones are kind of closing there. if I wanted to look at these all open at the same time, I can go up to my window menu and uncheck solo mode. And as you can see here, if I click split tone, now split tone's going to open. So if you want to work on like two filters and kind of play with them at the same time, you know, together and see how one affects the others, that's a great option. I personally don't work that way. I prefer to keep mine in solo mode here. So using, looking at some of these filters that were added, I'm just going to turn them off and on and kind of see what went on with this preset. So it looks like there was a little tone enhancer that was added. Looks like there was a split toner, which I really like here, and then this sunshine effect just to give it a little glowy boost, warming tone. What I don't see that I do want to add is my favorite, dynamic contrast. So I can add this filter just right on top of the sunshine filter. I'm going to make sure I have sunshine selected, and I'm going to choose dynamic contrast. Now you can see it's on top of the sunshine filter. And I'll turn this off and on so you can see what's actually happening. This is kind of like everyone's favorite filter to go to, I guess you could say. And I don't really want this to apply to the whole image, especially the background. And you probably can't really see that on your guys' end, but it's a little noisy now from the dynamic contrast. So I'm going to choose my brush right here, my masking brush, and I'm going to paint this out, this filter out off the background. And I'm going to start here and show you the mask view down at the bottom so you can see where I just painted there or just brushed out on those spots. And I'm just going to keep doing that there. But when I get close to the edge of her head with her hair, I'm going to have a problem. Well, this perfect brush tool is actually really, really great for that specific purpose. And let me actually turn down my feathering just a touch there so I can see where that edge starts. Turn down quite a bit. And so using my bracket key on my keyboard, left or right bracket, I can adjust the brush size. And make sure I'm set to paint out still. My perfect brush is on. And all I need to do is keep the minus sign on the color that I want to brush this filter or effect off of. You know, I don't need to worry about not hitting her hair at all with my brush. All I need to worry about is staying on this color of the background. And I'll show you the masking view of that so you can see. There's kind of her hair, and I can actually brush that back in. You can see some of her skin tones are the same color as this brush or this background, so it's sampling those out. I could brush those back in. I'm just going to turn off the perfect brush and go to Shift X so it brushes in, reduce my brush size with my bracket keys, and I'll just brush that back in. This is kind of the opposite of how I would prefer to work with this tool, but it gives you an idea of what you can do, you know, just simply brushing off your subject with this perfect brush. Or, whoops, let me flip over to paint out. And another kind of cool, now that I've kind of masked my subject, albeit very poorly, I can go to here, my masking options, and I could like invert this mask, you know, if I wanted to only apply something to the background. Remember that white reveals, black conceals. So, you know, as I invert this, let me go out of my masking view so you can see how this affects. I could invert this and watch her shirt as I invert this. So now the dynamic contrast is off her shirt, and now it's on her shirt. Now it's off, now it's on. So that's just a handy way to do your masking using that perfect brush. There's also luminosity masking. That's a very advanced feature, but a really cool one at that. So definitely check it out. I'm actually going to reset this and start from scratch and show you how I would prefer to use this. I'm actually going to invert this now. Remember, white reveals, black conceals. I want this to not appear on anything. And now I want to actually brush this in. So choosing Shift X on my keyboard, I'm just going to brush this in, maybe not on her face, but since I did that already, I'm not going to undo that. And I'm just going to brush this in on her blouse here and some of the parts of her hair. And I could maybe turn the feather up a little bit if I wanted to kind of give it a more artsy style look to that. I'm I'm not going to for this demo purpose because I got to speed along to the layers module here before I get kicked out. So that's just the basics of the effects module. You can see now my mask view. That's where I just brushed. It's a terrible mask. Probably better to use the perfect brush if you're trying to keep that in her hair. You know, we also have localized adjustments as well. So if you want to jump in and maybe boost the detail and the whiteness of her eyes, we have a magic eye fixer in here. And I do not actually use this as much as I prefer to just do a lighten as one adjustment and then a detail as another adjustment. So I'm going to use the magic eye fixer here, but essentially what this does is it adds more detail and it adds a little more brightness and whiteness to the eyes, just making them a little lighter. So I'm going to brush this in very poorly right now, but I'm going to give you guys an idea of what it does. So at 100%, that looks crazy, but you know, at like 18, maybe even like 28%, something like that on the opacity slider. And maybe I'll actually add another adjustment layer with a little bit of vibrance on the lips. Kind of make them pop a little more and tone that back a little bit too. So you can kind of see what I did there on her eyes. They stand out. Just turn that adjustment layer off and on. So pay attention to her eyes. It's very subtle what's going on, but as I do that, you can see it's just adding a little bit more brightness and a little bit more detail to her eyes. Same with her lips. As I turn this off and on, you can see how this adjustment is affected. I could even rename the adjustment if I wanted to, so I don't have to, you know, remind myself by turning it off and on every time what's what. So that's just like in Develop. Local adjustments, you can stack them on top of each other. Overall settings and effects is going to be where you add your filters. And I'm going to add one more filter here to finish it off, a vignette and Big Softy. We got to go with Big Softy always. And I'm actually going to choose this tool down here to find a spot on the photo that I want to accentuate. And it's probably right about there. So here is a before, and here is an after. And that didn't take me all but maybe 7 minutes max. And so yeah, it's super fast. It's super effective. I can save this as a preset if I want to do that, just by going to the settings menu and save settings as a preset. Let's go over to faded and matte, and we can save that as Michaela test. And I can just save that there. And you know, now if I have 20 different photos of Michaela and with this backdrop, I can apply that to all of those photos and get the same look across all of them. So just that's the effects module very quickly at a very beginner level. As I mentioned, there's a lot more to go through on that with luminosity masking, some of the advanced features, things like that. So definitely cruise our YouTube channel. There's a lot of great stuff on there. I'm going to jump into layers right now, and I'm just going to choose these 3 photos, and I'm going to jump into layers, and I'm going to choose add as a layer so that it stacks all 3 of these on top of each other. Now, this is a big reason why Photo RAW 19 has the layers integrated throughout the application, because as you can see here, it's kind of sending away my photo to the layers module. Versus with Develop and Effects, you can kind of jump back and forth with them and not have to wait on this to kind of load up and stack the images together. In RAW 19, you'll be able to just access your layers from wherever you are at in the photo, or in the application. So if you haven't checked out our website, I'm sure most of you have. That's coming middle of November, and there is a lot of information on the website, on1.com. Definitely check that out and learn more about the new version coming here soon. So once this loads up, we will be able to get started here. The Zoom conference, I think, is kind of bogging it down a little bit, so I'm not sure what's going on exactly. Uh-oh, getting the spinning beach ball. There we go. All right. So I'm sure a lot of you know the basics of layers, just from looking at these poll results here. So I won't spend too much time explaining how these are stacked on top of each other. But they are stacked on top of each other, and as I turn them on and off, obviously the layer on the top is going to be the one that appears. So what do I want to do? I want to actually cut out this rock, and I want to make it appear on this beach, and then I want to bring in this sky to this photo of the beach with the rock now in the photo. Obviously not as big as it is here in this photo. So using the layers module, over here on the left I have all my tools that I had in effects and develop, but I have more masking refinement options, because layers is really where you're going to get down and dirty, stitching photos, or sorry, compositing photos, stacking them together, creating templates, things like that. This is layers. That's where you want to do all that stuff. So first thing I want to do is actually choose my masking brush here. And I'm going to make sure I'm set to paint out at the top. And I'm also going to make sure I'm on the correct layer here. And I am just going to brush away. And as you can see, when I brush away, the layer that's underneath that comes in. If I turn off this second layer, now we're going to see the bottommost layer. If I turn off that layer, we're going to see a pixel checkered background. And I actually like the checkered background for my masking purposes myself. It just kind of helps me gauge the color scale a little better, because I know I'm going to want to use the perfect brush here soon. So using this perfect brush, I can, whoops, I actually did not select it there, and that Zoom conference popped up, so wait till that goes away. So choosing my perfect brush, just like I showed in the effects module, all I need to do is keep that minus sign on the color that I want to remove from this image layer. I'm not going to spend too much time on the bottom part, because this is kind of very similar tones to this. So I'm going to turn off my perfect brush now, and actually, so you can see I actually still have it on. Sorry about that. Turn that off. And I'm just going to get as close as I can without actually touching the edge. And I'm going to keep that. I might actually turn that feather way, way up there so I can be a little closer. Nope, that's actually probably a bad idea. I'm going to go the other way with the feather. Get closer to that edge. Whoops. So if you ever make a mistake, you can Command or Control Z to back up, and basically just erases that brush stroke that you just did. Just gonna brush in there, and then that might brush that back in right there, because it looks like I clipped it just a tad. Something like that. Now, choosing my Move tool, I can turn on my other layers again. And choosing my Move tool now, holding my Shift key, I can adjust this rock. Just holding my Shift key and choosing from here will keep the aspect ratio locked in, so it doesn't look, you know, giant in our photo. I can even rotate it a little bit from there, but I'm actually going to just try and get this right on point there. Come on, right about. Let's actually rotate this a little bit that way. And then I can just simply clicking on my arrows, now I can move that up. So like that. So now that we have that layer combined or stacked on top of this bottom layer here, I want to merge these together to combine them, so that when I do my sky replacement, it's going to see that this layer is a part of this layer now. So let me just choose the correct layers here, and I'm going to choose merge right here. You can see it popped up, says merge layer, so if you are ever curious, just hover your mouse over each of these tools and it'll tell you what they do. So now I want to bring back in the sky, or bring in, this sky underneath. So I want to choose my gradient mask, is actually tool is probably a good one to use here. Just like we were using in the develop module, I'm just going to use that here because I know it's a very easy to use one. And I'm actually going to fix that first underneath before I move on, because I don't really like where that sky is right now. So choosing my move tool, I can bring this up. I might actually make it a little wider than the canvas is, like right about there. And I can turn back on this layer, and I'm actually going to bring down this top layer's opacity as a whole so that I can see where the bottom layer is coming through. So you can see now, if I turn this all the way to 0, this is just my bottom layer showing. And I basically want to just align these horizons up as close as I can, which I'm pretty close there. So making sure I'm selected on this bottom layer because it's the one I want to move, I'm just going to bring that up to right about there, so you can get some of the like streaky clouds behind this. Would look cool. So I've got that set. I'm going to go back to my top layer now, and I'm going to adjust the opacity back to 100. And I'm going to choose my gradient mask tool again over here, and it should pop right back up like I was using. Yep, there it is. And I'm actually going to leave that. I'm not going to worry too much about that right now, because I'm going to jump into this brush tool, and I'm actually going to brush in. Rather than fiddling with that gradient mask, I'm just going to brush this back in here. And I can choose my perfect brush again if I want to. And it should do a fairly good job throughout, because that sky is a pretty different background. Might have to get in without the perfect brush in some cases. But all I'm doing here is I'm just painting back in, or brushing back in that layer, because the gradient mask that I put over it, it basically got rid of it, for lack of a better term. So I'm just using that perfect brush, using this brush tool to bring back in my rock, create something really kind of special, creative looking versus what we started with. You know, now I could be done and just move to effects if I wanted to, but I might actually add a color fill layer here real fast. And this is just going to add a layer that is a color to the photo. So let's maybe give it like a orangey warming tone or something like that. Let me bump this opacity up so that we can see exactly what's happening there. Actually, we could even go vintage with it and do something a little bit more in this range. So just a color wheel, color picker here. This is just a color fill layer, and I can change that to normal at the top. And if I were at 100% opacity, you could see it's just a, yellow layer. I'm actually going to tone it back to about here. And let's see what we got that we can play with. Ooh, that looks kind of cool. Let's just stick to color burn right here. And now that this color fill layer is added, I can actually keep toning down that opacity and just find something that's kind of, a little bit different looking than your average beach shot, I guess you could say. So there it is. That's the layers module in a nutshell. It's a very beginner's look at layers. There's some more advanced things on our YouTube channel. There's actually these videos under the Getting Started playlist, Deep Dive. There's a deep dive into layers. There's a deep dive into effects. Pretty much every module has a deep dive and a getting started video. I would highly recommend watching those if you do have more questions on a specific module. I'm going to show you guys the export function real fast here. So when I'm in browse and I want to actually like change, export the file to publish or to send to someone or even to print, there's a couple options I have. Let me just choose a cool photo here so it looks a little better on the screen for you guys. Let's choose this photo right here. So export drawer down here at the bottom right, or if you get confused, just come up to the file menu and there is an export option as well right here. So choosing export opens up this drawer on the right side. This is where you can change the size of the photo. So if you do, want to change the size of the photo, you can do it right here, and it is powered right by resize. So you don't even need to go into resize to resize the photo. There's also watermark adding. I just have a watermark file, and I'll maybe put that like right there so no one steals the image or anything of the model. You can change that, obviously. You can add sharpening. You can even add a gallery wrap. So if you're doing canvas printing, this is going to automatically apply the wrap for you. Very handy feature. You can change the file type as well from if you're working off of a PSD file or a TIFF file, you can change it to JPEG. So yeah, that is ON1 Photo RAW in a nutshell. That is the export module there. Yeah, I don't have anything else to show you guys, so I'm just going to close it down here. For those of you that did stick around, looks like there's about a dozen or so of you. Thanks for being here. If you do have further questions, feel free to send me an email. My email is jmorelli, just my initials, at on1.com, on1.com. Feel free to send me an email if you have questions on anything further. And yeah, thanks for taking an hour out of your day to be here with me to check out ON1 Photo RAW 2018. I hope this got you guys going in a good direction, helped clear up some of the things you had questions on. But if not, you have my email, jmm@on1.com. And hopefully we'll get this posted here this afternoon. And if not, you should look for it first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, that's all I have for you guys here today. So thanks again for being with me. Have a very, very happy Thursday, and good night to those of you on the East Coast. See you later.